After having been away for 4 weeks, I'm going to share with you my impressions about Chicago. And it was such a great time. Let's start with that part. So, this is not going to be your average. What did you do in Chicago and which sightseeing did you do? Which places did you go to? Yeah, I might list a few, but this is primarily about my experience when it comes to the people in Chicago, when it comes to transport in Chicago, and of course, some of the things I've experienced. But let me start by saying this one as first. The people in Chicago are so immensely kind. I had such a blast when it came to the people in Chicago. I've been to the US more often. Let's get that straight. But this was a different kind of animal, those people there. So there's all walks of life basically interact with one another, whether it's young and old, whether it's black or white, whether it doesn't matter. I mean, I've seen guys with long braids in their hair and fancy nails. But I've also seen, the ones who are a little bit older and went to the game and they were just as friendly. I mean, and that's what I love about the city. It's one big, I don't know. It's like they thrown in all the cultures which are available in America and beyond, and jumbled it up a little bit, jumbled it up, and I don't know. Out came a friendly bunch of people, and that's amazing to see. And that's why I said all walks of life. I mean, from um, a lot of young ones who dress as rappers to, like I said, the older ones who, maybe they're retired or they're still working, to the ones who are very exotically dressed. People seem to take a lot of effort when it comes to how they come across. And but again, what struck me the most is how kind people are. And with kind, I mean really kind. And to give you an example, and this was a little bit embarrassing to think about it, but at some point I went to Walmart, and here's the thing. I come from Europe, I was in the US, and there was a 7-hour time difference. So I use a debit card, which is because then I can see what actually happens. It's safer too. But the thing was that whenever I wanted to see what was going on, they had maintenance between 3 in the afternoon and say till 8:30. So at some point I had some cash and I knew there was some money on my credit card. So I was like, okay, let me know when I've come to about $80. And they said, yeah, sure. And there I was. And I said, well, I've got cash, so no worries. And of course, I always have my other account. But it didn't work. So, okay, just take this off. Still didn't work. Take this off. Still didn't work. And I totally did not get it. What was happening? And before I actually figured out what to do, the cashier said, the guy behind you, he has paid for you. Well, his name was Jay, by the way. And I was completely surprised. I was like, huh? So I asked her again, what did you just say? Yeah, the guy behind you, he paid for you. And I was like, oh, really? And then I looked at him. I said, did you pay for me? Yes, I did. I said, why? And then he said, well, I've been in that same situation. And that's no fun, which was true. I totally was not happy because of what had happened. But he had done it, and actually, the change of those $80 was given to me. And of course, I sort of returned the favor when there was a guy who said, "I need food for me and my boy." I made sure that he was able to get some food, so he joined us at a restaurant. Well, not a restaurant, a takeaway. Um, so we get with one hand, we give with the other, or we give with one hand and we get with the other. Um, but that was not something that I've experienced before. And the first night I got there, and that was also very, uh, well, I will say very special, but it was also very surprising. I um, I went to the gas station nearby because everything was closed early, which I didn't expect. But I'll get back to that later on. And I knew it would be, but I really needed to take the shower after a long flight, two long flights actually, first short one and second long one. So I knew there was a gas station nearby, so I decided to go and get some stuff there. And clumsy as I am, sleepy as I was, I managed to drop a bottle. I was talking to someone, and I was in the meanwhile trying to rearrange my bag, and well, there it was. One bottle of Starbucks shattered on the floor. Well, they helped me clean up, which was very kind. And then I said, well, I'm going to walk back now. And the guy I've been talking to was a former cop. And he said, well, just make sure that you're safe when you return. And I said, yeah, I'll be safe. And by the time I returned to the hotel, which was in walking distance, he came up to me and he had followed me and he was surprised that I was already there. And then we got to talk, and he said, well, if you want to, I can show you a bit around. And because he was already sharing a little thing or two about Chicago. And he actually treated me to dinner, which was kind of nice at a authentic Mexican place. And that was my first encounter with how kind Chicagoans are. And up till the moment I left, I stand by this. People in Chicago are really, really kind. And we've had, and we is Joe and me. So Joe is not on this live because Joe isn't feeling very well. Um, she has a sore throat. She's been sleep deprived. So, and of course, there's been a huge impact. Spending time together for 4 weeks, and now for her sort of being on her own again. And that switch is kind of hard. But she agrees that the people are very kind. So we have visited firehouses, and I also will get back to it, why we did. Got tours, bought shirts, and then people would say, you know what, let me drive you home. So lots of people have driven us home, and I'm not talking about Uber, but people we were talking to. So it was really, really nice, really friendly people. As for the second day, when I got to pick up Joe from the airport, same story, and that was actually someone who had lived there and now was living in Canada. I think that wearing at least one brace, in the end I was wearing both my braces, so knee braces, made a difference. But yeah, people started to talk. Okay, what is it and why and what happened? So if people recognized what it was instantly what happened. And then they would share their story too. And that's what I meant with people are so friendly and there is actual real communication going on. People, the amount of times that people actually ask me, how did you get that? We don't have this here. And okay, how can I get it? So I would tell them the brand and all. And actually, one of those last days that one of the people asked me about it, both Joe and I, because we ran into the guy and his girl, his daughter, a few times, actually bought us ice cream. And I was, again, totally surprised. Why did he do it? But he did do it, and it was very kind again. Um, Again, surprised. And, you know, here in the Netherlands, people don't really interact with other people. So I do smile at people, and especially the older people really like it. Women, of course, like it. But there are also some people who are like, huh? Me? Why would you smile? And people also tend to be a bit rude, especially when they don't have the time. So let's put it this way. Usually you get ignored. I think that's the best way to put it. And to give you an example, at some point I was at the supermarket. I was doing grocery shopping, was at the cash register, and well, there was one person in front of me. There was some stuff on the belt of the cash register, but no one there, so I put my stuff behind it and not thinking much of it. And then someone was standing behind me in line, and she said, "Yeah, just push over the stuff." And I was like, I felt it was a little bit weird, so I said, "Yeah, I don't know who put it there, but yeah, I'll slide it over." And that was my initial reaction, being Dutch, because I was like, oh, well, someone put it there, and why is someone putting it there and it's not here? And then it dawned on me, oh my God, this is the person and her stuff, which is on the belt. And so I said to her, oh, is this your stuff? And she said, yes. I said, oh, you were ahead of me. She said, yes. I said, I'm so sorry for being so rude. So I said, well, please go first. And that was the thing. I could have known that by what she said, that she actually was like, oh, it's okay, just, you know. And I concluded something totally different. And that's, again, an example of how the people are. They are, I haven't seen much people who were rushed. They were kind of laid back. Of course, you were rushed when you had to get on and off the train. And of course, I've also seen a number of things which I was like, hey, oh, and before I get to that next part, which is about public transportation, let me share this with you. Although I've been to the US a lot, I've never been using public transportation. I think I had the opportunity when I was in Phoenix. Part of it was I had to call the bus myself. Didn't understand the system, so didn't even want to try. And other part of it was I just called an Uber, which was just easier. But I knew there was public transportation in Chicago, and I dare say it's actually arranged kind of good. But if you're not used to it, then you might not know what to expect. And also, don't expect to be on time. Let me say that again. Don't expect to be on time when you're using it. So, you know, sometimes it's spot on, and sometimes it's just drama. Of course, part of it also has to do with COVID. And like I said, I'll mention COVID a little bit later on. But COVID has caused a lot of people, basically on sick leave. So, of course, that means that if you have a good functioning system and then people cannot be part of that anymore because of sickness, yeah, then it starts to falter. And also, when it came to festivities, when there were festivities downtown, that also caused a lot of jams in route. So buses had to reroute because of it, and or they were basically stopped in their tracks. Also, I think the vice president was there at some point. Again, rerouting of the buses. They didn't know where to go. So we used, I would say, three sort of public transportation: the elevated trains, the normal buses, and the pace buses. So when I went to the cash register saying, okay, I want to go on transport, can I buy something? Yes, you can. Okay, what do you need? Do you need the pace buses? And I was like, I don't know. I don't know what pace buses are. Yeah, for the suburbs. I had no clue what suburbs were. So I said, well, make sure that I can use it all. I don't want to be somewhere and I can't hop on. Well, they understood that. So I got a week pass for me. I got a week pass for Joe, and it worked just fine. The next week, I found out what pace buses were. Why? Because I couldn't get on the pace bus anymore. I had prolonged the thing, actually for 2 weeks, and that was the end of it. I couldn't use them. So I didn't understand one thing, and that's when I found out that when you know how it works, it runs smooth, but when you don't know, it's not that smooth. So in the beginning, there are a few lies from Joe and me talking about public transportation, and she said in the beginning, oh, it's easy here. Because when you look at the system, the underground of London is very comparable to the L trains, which stands for elevated trains, so the trains above ground on poles, to the ones of Chicago. Each has their own name and color, and that's basically the same as it works in London. So that system was doable. But there were some side effects, which had to do with colors of lines and the times that you were traveling. So I'll get back to the pace buses in a sec. But one of the things that we actually got told is don't go on the red line. Don't go. Don't do it. And then there was someone who said, oh, you can't just go on the red line. No problem. Don't worry. Then there were some people who said, well, you can go on there, but don't do it late at night. And that brings me back to all walks of life. And it's something I've seen elsewhere too. Especially the young people, they don't seem to care. And I'm not talking about all young people, but the ones who were actually playing loud music and sometimes were smoking, literally smoking in the train, those were the young ones. And when music was on, it was rap music, and they looked the part, like, who are you to say something to me, and why should I turn it down, all that stuff. Of course, it's forbidden, loud music, and just like smoking and all that other stuff. We even saw someone selling it on the train. And I was like, oh my God, can you be less obvious? And he went from one train, and then when someone had bought something, he got out and got on the opposite train. Oh, I don't really care if you sell weed or anything. But I do care when you smoke, because of my own allergies. And I am not fond of listening to other people's music. I'm just not. I'll be honest, it annoys me quite a lot. So Joe and I quickly figured out, let's find a wagon which is empty, where we can sit down, where no one else is. And of course, there was a big difference, because during daytime, we would see totally different people, also elderly people who'd been to a game, for instance. But when it was night, yeah, that's when you saw everyone come out. Well, one of the things I loved a lot, really a lot, and then I come back to the young people actually, was they were dressed up the way they wanted to dress up. So a lot of cosplay seemed to be involved. You could really see the music, and they had a certain style, and that's what I really loved about the things. You could see them in in daytime too. I remember talking to some guy who was reading in Japanese book, uh, which was game related. Um, and it stood out, and it was also fun. And it was like, yeah, this is what defines Chicago. And again, all walks of life, all different kind. I guess Joe and Italian restaurant, that's what Joe and I did. And apparently, there was someone there. I think it was another actor. There were producers there too. They were all linked to the film industry. But the one we connected to was actually one of the ladies over there. And well, Joe was sitting next to her. I was sitting across from Joe, so opposite her. And we started talking about all these things, and they were not easy subjects. Let's keep it to that. Lovely lady, beautifully dressed, and at some point we got offered birthday cake, and I was like, huh? Why? Again, the why. So someone ended up saying, did you enjoy it? I said, yeah. Oh, you were the one who gave us the birthday cake. Yeah, thank you. So, but you're not the one who has his birthday, or are you? No, that's that one. So we congratulated that person too. And apparently they were very curious about us because of what we said. So the owner wanted to come and get pictures with us, and we vice versa with the owner too. And he showed us all the pictures of the actor I was talking about before, who had said, go there, mention my name. And yeah, again, that was kind of special too. And I love the place, by the way. A lot of pictures of Marilyn Monroe there too, and also of the people who came there. And they were very generous. I have to say, I'm used to the portions, of course, in the Netherlands, which are small. And then when you go to Italian restaurants over there, and the portions are like, oh my God, this is 4 times or 3 times the amount of salmon I normally get. I literally had some salmon the other day, and it was like, oh, that was maybe a fourth, maybe less than what I got there that day. And again, people were so kind, interested, easy to talk to, easy to talk with. Yeah, that was amazing. And so, of course, Joe stood out, and it's a shame she's not here. So hopefully she can talk about this herself next time because of her British accent. And she says she doesn't like it. I think it defines her. I mean, she's British, right? And so people actually welcomed us to their city and to their country. But especially her. And she actually, some people were like, welcome here. And that's so kind. And I didn't hear it once. I heard it several times. And that's what I mean again, was people were so kind and so inviting over there. As for Chicago itself, Yeah, we did do some sightseeing. Especially Joe said, we need to see this, that, and the other. So one thing involved the beam, and I was like, what's the beam? And the beam is like this object which is very shiny. It's huge, by the way, and it holds the reflection of the city behind it. So when you're standing in front of it, you also see your own reflection. And we went there by night, and that was kind of cool. I can't say anything else. It was very nice to be able to play with the reflection and what we were able to see and take pictures of that. So she also wanted to go on the Ferris wheel, which was near Navy Pier. And that was a way to actually view the city from on top. Um, I I did see something, but I wasn't in the right angle. Also, I was paying more attention to other stuff. So yeah, it was nice. I especially like the view from outside the Ferris wheel because it's neon blue, and it looks pretty cool. And then there was also the Willis Tower or the Sears Tower, which is the one. It's the not the highest tower. It was for 25 years, but it's the one with two antennas, which is high up in the air. And there's this glass box inside there. So with glass floor, glass walls, glass ceiling. And again, it gives you a great view of the whole city. I could be mistaken. I think it was on 110th floor. So Joe at first was a little bit scared. And, it was just, she had to get used to the height. And then I invited her in. So that was kind of cool. Like, okay, I'm reaching out my hand. Just come stand beside me. And she did. But seeing the city, that was actually kind of nice. It was kind of nice to see all the views from the city. Well, of course, I'm not familiar with everything which is in there. I've become more familiar with what you can actually see. Um, but it was impressive, even when you didn't know what you were looking at, which was true for me. So we did see some sightseeing, but most of all, we came there to see Chicago PD and Chicago Fire in action. But before I continue about that part, let's go back to the architecture. So one of the things which stood out for me was it's got this industrial look and feel. I call it the steampunk feel and look. I wouldn't know how to describe it differently. So what I'm used to when I go to the US is, besides all the malls which you see from the side of the road, is a lot of wooden houses. And in this case, I saw also a lot of brick houses. And I was like, hey, those I know to be existing in the Netherlands and in other European countries. But I'd never seen that like I did there in Chicago. So, and it was high-rise buildings next to, like I said, the ones which were built from wood, next to the ones built from brick. There were really fancy areas, or maybe some streets, right next to alleys that were like, okay, I don't want to walk here on my own in the middle of the night. Uh, there were painted walls with lots of beautiful paintings which had a message. That I don't know, maybe I should say unity, but it stood for something, and I could really appreciate it. It was really beautiful. So there was, it was I don't know. It was a mixture. Again, it was a mixture of, I guess, rich and poor next to one another. We quickly learned, or I quickly learned, due to what the former police officer told me, about north and south. Um, I still haven't got the total picture because there are no maps of Chicago other than the ones in your phone. And of course, the ones which are related to the public transportation. But it's basically very rectangular. So you can have 97th Street go, I don't know if maybe I'm saying the wrong way now, but from east to west. And you can have like Cicero Street from north to south. And I probably am saying it the wrong way now. But apparently, um, the numbers up north, they start from zero. And then when you go to the south, they add up. But also there's a turning point at some point, and then it does go up, but then in the other side and in the other direction. So that meant having to understand how it actually worked, and that's why it was a shame that I couldn't get any maps, because that would have made it easier. But it also meant that when you would be on the L train, that you could be on the pink line and you could be on the orange line. Well, of course, not at the same time, but they basically would have the same stops. The names would have the stops would have the same names, but they would be apart from one another. So there's a little trick, recognizing where you are, where you're going to, depending on, well, if you know the numbers, um, and if you know how the streets work. So there's a system behind it all. And that's actually pretty cool. So it's just easier to know the areas. So certain areas have certain names, and that makes it more understandable. And that's what brings me back to the whole pace bus system. So the pace buses are sort of like the surrounding areas, what they call the suburbs. So you have the bus stops, which stop basically at every crossing. But when you come, I'm not sure if I say this correctly, and if I don't say it correctly, please correct me. When it comes to the outskirts more, you would have, I don't know how to describe it differently than the local buses. So they would be the ones you would stop at like every couple of 100 meters, until, and then at some point they would be parallel to the normal buses, but they would have less stops, until of course they would go downtown, and then they would stop quite regularly. And so the normal CTA system, the Chicago Transport Association, I think it's called, would hold the inner circle plus a part of the outer circle, but then in huge chunks. And then there would be the pace buses, which would drive till a certain time during weekdays, and earlier during the weekends. And what struck me was they might go till 6 in one direction and till 10 in the other direction, which I guess it's all based on when people are using the bus the most, or the time that they work. I don't know, need transportation. So that was, when you're an outsider, it's like, how does that work? And that's, it's good to know how it works. And I got in some problems. Well, trouble is a big word. Let's put it this way. I got the wrong ones at some point, the wrong week passes, and you couldn't just change it. But then the moment that you actually called the ones who were in charge of the line, in this case Ventra, they would help you sort it out, and they would make certain that things were transferred. So as for things I would suggest, if you're new to Chicago, get to know the public transport system, understand how it works, understand what pace buses are, and what you want to take. Of course, you can always take the Uber. We usually took the Uber when public transportation was not available or when we had a lot of stuff. Um, and what was the other thing I wanted to say? Oh yeah, but it's also important to understand the whole system about week passes, day passes, all that kind of things. And again, when I called them, they helped me out, and that was the thing I wanted to say. Make sure you get a phone which is SIM lock free, so you can bring that with you, or you buy one and get a you can get a 1 month contract over there, and then you can continue it with another month, and you can stop it whenever you want. And I've actually had that before when I was in the US before, I think in 2014, and I couldn't find it the last time I was there. But this time I found it. I went to Walmart, and here was the thing. Of course, the people from Walmart didn't know about how it worked. And at some point they said, "Ooh, we're not responsible," and blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. Except for one guy. And it was kind of fun. And then we get back to the hospitality. He was standing there. He had all these loaves of cake. And I said, "Oh, that looks good. Oh, do you want a bit?" you know. But he was the one who even he was off duty, so someone else advised us. But when it didn't work out, he was the one who advised us best and told us what to do. Basically, dial the number and get to talk to the people. And then they made sure that everything was corrected for us because we had gotten some really bad advice at Walmart. So by getting a local phone number, I was able to download a bunch of apps because being European and being Dutch, it's a regional thing. You usually cannot access certain apps, which is kind of annoying because a lot of discounts are through apps. So, like for instance, they have this local shop. So you have Walmart, which is all around the US, all over the US, and then there's something which is called Dual Osco, which is, and they say that too, is purely for the people from Chicago. Well, nice thing about it, it was very close to our hotel as opposed to Walmart. So we went there quite a lot. And then I would see things like this on sale. And then I would come to the cash register and I would say, "Why isn't this working?" Okay, well, so I would say, "Why isn't this working?" And the first time they put in, I think, their own phone number or something at least that worked. But then they didn't anymore, and I was like, "Oh my god, this is a huge price difference," and no clue. But at some point, when I got the phone to work, when I got the app, it worked. It worked nicely. But before it did, no one is going to say to you, "Oh, by the way, when you don't have a local phone number, when you don't have an account, you have to pay full price." So those are things that you do want to know. Also, and I really can't remember this, but apparently it's been always been like this. Everything is shown without um, text, and that was weird because in the Netherlands, when you are a company, then you see the prices without VAT. But when you are a normal buying customer, then everything is the price and taxes are included. So again, a reason why I was like, "Why is this high?" when I come to the cash register. So at first I didn't realize that it has to do with the things on sale not being on sale for me. But I quickly saw that it had to do with the taxes. Again, until I got a local phone. And here's the thing. apparently I can use it over here too. It's Simlock free, the one I got. And I actually went to the Apple Store. That's totally different story. And the Apple Store, they checked that phone. And because I also brought my normal phone, which I can use all over the world, and they said, yeah, it's good to go. Nothing fishy about it. It's probably because the model is going to change. So I had it pretty cheap. Can't say anything else. And someone else said, well, maybe you should just sell it. And I was like, yeah, I could. But, it's nice to know that when I return to the US, hopefully in not too long a time, that I can get a number again. Probably another number, different area means other number, but that's okay. And again, it's nice to be able to text with other people and also call with other people. So a big difference compared to the Netherlands is when we text to one another, and we want to send images, it starts about MMS, so it has a certain format. So if two people have the same phone, but they do not necessarily have a smartphone, one has or the other hasn't, or one has a non-Apple phone, an Android, and the other one has an Apple phone, then things might go haywire. So when it's Apple to Apple, it doesn't matter where you are, in which country you are, which phone number you have. It uses iMessage. Am I promoting Apple? I guess I am. Yes. Am I fond of Apple? Absolutely. As for when people have Android, we usually have a system called WhatsApp, which means exchanging phone numbers, and then you can send one another messages. And that's what we use when we want to send other people pictures and videos. And that was pleasantly surprising to see that text in the US actually includes pictures and videos. So I could have known it probably, but the previous times I always was with friends or I used Uber. So I guess I didn't need to know. And this time I was with a friend who came there with me instead of living there. So that was a whole different ball game. So that's why I learned a lot of new tricks and tips, which of course was kind of cool. Going on about impressions, I can go two ways now. I could go talk about the pizza, because everyone said you need to go to Giordano's and Lou. Oh my God, I wish Chris was here. Lou Martinelli's, I think it was called. I've been to both, by the way. And then the first thing we heard, deep dish pizza. There's also another term for it. And thin crust pizza. Well, thin crust pizza I know. And by the way, I love thin crust pizza. I also know that portions in the US are bigger than portions in Europe, and especially in the Netherlands. That's the thing about going somewhere more often. Also, people warned me about this. They did the same thing when I went to Australia. So that was no surprise. But seeing the height of that deep dish pizza, that was a big surprise. And it was like, okay, interesting. Let's put it this way. I'm glad I had the thin crust pizza. But yeah, we've been to several restaurants, and I have to admit that La Scorola was nice at being really Italian, the way you expect it to be restaurant. So, and also the other ones were good too. And luckily for me, I was able to eat it all. They were able to keep certain ingredients off or add them, and so I could actually eat it. So that was nice. It was really nice. So what was the other thing? Oh, that's the thing when I'm on my own and Joe is not there. The other thing I wanted to talk about, oh yeah, that's probably about why we went there. And then we get to one Chicago PD and Chicago Fire. But before I do, um, there were some fishy people there too. And of course, people are always warned. Uh, be aware of pickpockets, um, all those kind of things. So one person, a policeman, actually said to me, "You need to carry 2 wallets. So if someone pulls a knife or has a gun, uh, give him the wallet. Make sure there's a couple of dollar bills in there, and it's over and done with." Okay, sound advice. Um, I did have an extra wallet with me. Actually, didn't put the dollars in, but if I were to be on my own, I absolutely would do it. And again, Uber is always available. So remember that when you need somewhere to go, um, and it's late and you're on your own, then you might not want to take public transportation, but you might want to do other things. But the fishy stuff actually happens during daytime. So when that first guy said, let me show you around, I made sure, because Joe wasn't with me that first day, I made sure that she know who I was with. So he had given me his phone number and his name. So I sent him a picture, um, a little bit about what car he was driving in, and also on WhatsApp you can actually follow one another. The thing was that at some point we went to the Starbucks and we got to talk to someone. Again, people are very kind. And he started a little bit talking about his work and all that stuff. It seemed totally interesting what he was talking about. So I was like, oh, that would be interesting to do a live with you. And then he said, you know where you need to go? You need to go to the ice cream shop next door. Let me show you. And this was weird because he showed us and then he didn't take any ice cream. And then he said, yeah, I don't have the money for it. Okay, well, let me pay your ice cream. So he totally happy and blah, 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 blah. And then he started talking about the White Sox team. Oh, you need to go see it and you need to see the area. Just seeing the area, not even a game, is already very impressive. Okay, so he showed us, and true, it was very impressive. It was really nice to watch. Big statues over there, really lifelike. Um, Things they wrote on there. I guess it's something you need to have seen. And then he said, "Oh, well, I'll have my friend pick us up." Sure. And then Joe whispered to me, "Make sure you give him some cash." And I was like, "Oh yeah, that's a good idea." And he seemed happy with the cash. And he said, "Well, I'm going to make sure that we get tickets to the White Sox game and we are going to go there. But first," he said, "we are going to eat pizza." And we were supposed to go to Giordano's. It was very fully booked. So that's how we ended up at Lou, Lou M. People who are local, they know what I'm talking about. And it was, it was not as busy over there. And it was very nice. Um, I don't know what he expected from us. And it was already a bit like, why do you want to hang out with us every day? That was my feeling. And I also said to Joe, I said, there's something fishy about this guy. Don't trust him fully. And so Joe and I, we paid for our part of the pizza. They paid for their part of the pizza. And then we talked about the things we wanted to do. And they said, well, I just recently discovered Second City. It's above one of the Starbucks. And, well, I heard about Second City, actually through Chicago PD. And I want to see what it is because it looked really fancy with a nice roof terrace and all. So we talked about it and said, okay, let's go there. So I bought 4 tickets for Joe and me and for the other 2 guys. And then one said, well, I don't know if I have the money at that point, which was the friend of the one we had encountered at Starbucks. And I was like, well, if you don't have the money, that's okay too. Then see the street. But the next few days, we were supposed to go to the White Sox game. Nothing happened. And Joe was really looking forward to it. And you could tell, and I said, this is not going to happen. You can tell. He's already looking for excuses and mm-mm. And yeah, that became true. And then, of course, I'm so sorry. And this came up and that came up. And that actually already happened when we were going to the pizza place. So at that point, I said at some point, like, okay, we are going to take the bus and we're going to go ourselves because this can last forever. And I don't want that. Then he started talking really badly about his friend, which was like, why are you doing it? And it was, the moment that we were alone with his friend, he was a bit shy, but then he would open up and he was a really kind guy. He was really kind, really good guy. Some struggles in life, but that can happen to people. So him bad mouthing him, that was weird. It was weird all over. So White Sox didn't go on, and he was supposed to pay for the tickets or get us really cheap tickets. And then, of course, it was time for the second city, and it was supposed to be our last night. And then, of course, he couldn't make it, and his friend couldn't make it. And I felt sorry for his friend because I think he would have loved to come. And, again, if he would have said, I don't have it, I can't do it, I would have said, you're sure, no worries, we've already paid for it, and you just come along. Anyway, he promised to refund us, and he still hasn't done this until this day. So that was fishy person number 1. And then there was fishy person number 2. And I really have to think for a second what that was about. Oh yeah, now I know. I'm not going to name names. I'm not going to talk about occupations because it would be too easily to recognize. Hey, hi Terry, so good to see you. If you want to join, just let me know. Then I'll copy the stream link and StreamYard link. So this guy also showed us around, talked about things, gave us a ride home. And then he said, yeah, I want to meet up. And that's where it was weird because he said, I want to meet up before 6, before my shift. And I was like, what? That's weird time. But of course, yeah, could be. Okay, you can join in. Nice for you to say hi. I'm talking a little bit about my impressions of Chicago, not necessarily about the things I've visited, because there are a lot of things that people want to go to when they go to Chicago, but more about how I experienced Chicago, the people, which were very friendly, but also the city itself. And I mean, it's a mixture of people, on all walks of life, but also the buildings, high-rise buildings next to industrial areas. The people who have invested in those industrial areas made it into really nice areas. Then the wooden houses I'm used to seeing, up till brick houses, which I'm not used to seeing in the US. But okay, so you've got an early day tomorrow. I'm going to sleep shortly. Well, I'll honestly say I'm surprised I'm still awake. you might know that. I've been sleeping a lot ever since I got back, which was on Saturday morning. But I wanted to pick up my routine again, go live again. And, I'm still in my mind partially in Chicago. So it seemed to make sense to talk about Chicago. So at this moment, I went from how kind people are, the conversations we had, to what I saw in Chicago, a little bit about sightseeing, a little bit about public transportation, how useful it is to actually have an American phone number over there so you can download apps, up till the sort of fishy people. And those are not the people we were warned about, like don't go on the red line. Or don't travel in the middle of the night. Those were the people we talked to actually during daytime, and who presented themselves as very kind, and where you knew something was off. And I first spoke about someone, and I was like, don't know why he did what he did, and now I'm talking about someone else. So he also gave me a ride home, or us. Which seemed to be the norm. And then it was like, why is he inviting us that early? And then I said, no, this is not doable. We need our sleep. Our bodies need sleep, and we can't do it. And the fishing thing was, we were asked where we were staying and what our room number was. And that was like, something is off. Why do you need to know what my room number is? So I think I did tell him, and at the same time I also told him, but you can't come in, we will come out. And that's what we did. Well, actually not the 6 o'clock appointment, it became a 3 o'clock appointment, which was, by the way, better doable for the both of us, because usually we were still awake, because we would return back to the hotel about midnight, 1 o'clock, and then we would still be talking and exchanging videos. So we would be awake. But at 6, no, that didn't happen. So at some point it was like, he seems to be really quiet, and there's this nervous thing about him when he's around us. Well, long story short, he wanted more from us. He actually wanted to be in our room, probably in our beds. That's all I want to say about it. Of course, it never happened. We found out pretty quickly, doing this kind of stuff when you're married, that wasn't good at all. So that's a shame, actually, because he seemed like a very nice guy. And, the moment he did this, it was like, something is off. And that's what I meant was, it's the people who seem to do the right thing, seem very kind, who, well, just trust your gut. When something is off, something is off. And like I said, other people drove us home too, and they were really kind. They didn't want anything else. They were sincere, and you could tell they were sincere. And at the same time, these people really weird. So I don't know what the norm is, but I do know that since we encountered 2 people doing this in the 4 weeks that we were there, and we are not the youngest persons, let's face it. But that basically says enough. And I think one was after our money, and the other one was after SEX. So the last thing I want to talk about, and actually I would really like to do this with Joe, so I'm going to keep it short, is we have seen the recordings and the set of Chicago Fire, so the actual firehouse, which was also what led us to see and visit other firehouses, do YouTube videos. So it's all going to get out there. I still need to edit it. We bought a lot of t-shirts. We heard a lot about the stories behind the firehouses, which was pretty cool. And the people were so immensely kind. As for Chicago PD, um, we are not allowed to go to the set itself. So the studio, which also applies to Chicago Fire, by the way, um, CineSpace Studios, you can't get there. There's no tour you can do. It's not visible, but apparently it is a really neat place to be. Um, so hopefully they will provide us with the possibility of doing a tour. That would be really nice. But what we did see is we got to see the actors from afar and also from up close and personal. Not every actor. Um, and we also got to witness what they were doing. So pretty early on, someone said, you need to get monoculars because depending on where they were recording and how they were recording, so in which direction, we were able to stand close by, or we had to stay on the other side of the street, or you had to stay far away. So I bought this camera, which had 60 times zoom. It's not the best camera, actually. It doesn't work when it comes to when it's dark, or maybe I haven't explored it enough, or maybe I'm just spoiled with my other cameras. That can be true too. But it was kind of useful. So I ended up with a camping chair and an extra camera. And of course, a whole bunch of shirts and all that other stuff. And it was nice to, at some point the crew knew who we were, actors partially knew who we were, but seeing how it was done, so to record a shot, so actually a few seconds of a scene, they have to take several shots from different angles. They have to repeat it over and over and over again. So like over 100 people are involved, just, with the whole recording. Apparently in total, there are like 200 people involved, including the actors. And when you would see that, I've seen guys who were in charge of light. The good ones, they could do it from the ground, or the ones who were in luck could do it from the ground. They had like this monitor, I think it was an iPad, and they could redirect thousands of lights, also across the street. So they had these huge antennas. And then there were the guys who were on top of, oh my God, how am I going to explain this? The trucks, which can really rise high with the ladders going up high. Well, they would have a light at the top or underneath, and they would be there basically all day long, and that's tough because they would shoot day scenes in the middle of the night. Just they would like they shoot. I'm sorry, I'm going to say that again. Just as they would shoot night scenes during the daytime. So they would use like, and again, I don't know how to explain this. It was like they had a lot of covers, which would shut out the light when it was daytime. And at nighttime, like I said, they had these big, huge lights shining through the window. And, seeing how that actually worked, and also the time it took, I was really impressed. I can't say anything else. I was really impressed seeing how that worked. We also saw other things like how they made it look like someone was driving the car. So sometimes people were driving the car, but sometimes they would also attach it to another car, and the cameras would be literally on top of the windscreen. And it would look like they were drying themselves, but they were actually being pulled. And so, and there were a lot of other little things which were so cool to witness, to watch. Um, and of course, what's nice is we now actually can recognize certain parts where we've been, both Joe and I, when we watch the series. But when you see what's involved, how meticulous they are, the amount of detail that's involved, wow, I can only say wow. So, for instance, the makeup artists are there. The hair has to be in the same place. They have to look the same way. And I, again, didn't realize how much was involved, but because they do it during the day, and maybe I'm not sure if they also do the same scene on different days. But like I said, it has to look the same, which included making sure that their makeup and their hair and their clothing were the same. So when it would be really hot, you could see one of them actually wearing his shirt above, on top of his t-shirt. And I was like, oh my God, that must be so warm. And he said, yeah, it is. Again, the ones who came to us, they were really kind. We could laugh with them, and we were sort of known as the meerkats in the end. I shouldn't be doing this because that will make the camera go from left to right and up and down. And I actually do appreciate that name a lot. What else is there to say? I could list a bunch of people. I'm not going to, because of privacy reasons. But overall, it was a very impressive experience. And because we have seen so much, we have done so much, we were too tired to actually do any recording. So that's why I didn't. So I did do my normal coaching job, except for a few things. There were some things I couldn't do the way I wanted to. So I did them partially. But live, no, we were just too tired. So I did do a lot of live stuff on Instagram. And there's a lot more footage that I did record, but I haven't put online yet. And the same applies to Joe. What I did decide, however, is, and I didn't talk much about it, because of what I've seen and experienced and what it was like, I want to include some things in my current routine. So I was talking about my routine. Like I said, I did do coaching, but it was all a little bit haywire, and especially the going live, that's what just didn't happen unless it was spontaneously on Instagram. And when I got back, that was the easy part, because then I could go back into that routine. But there were also things I really liked about being there, and we also had to adapt to certain things. So a couple of times we were supposed to leave, especially one time in particular. It was like, what are we going to take with us or not? We also were, well, there was no cutlery, there were no cups, there were no plates or anything in the room. So we had to buy certain things. And that's weird when I walk around in stores now. It's like, oh, I still have this, I have that. No, I don't need to buy it now because, I've got my own place with the cups and the plates and the cutlery. That's a real experience. I can't say anything else. But we had to make choices, and we, of course, being with the two of us, we had to sort of have a certain structure, knowing which stuff was from who, where to put our clothes and all that stuff. And some of that routine and some of the things I did, I want to include in the routine I already had. So I want to pimp certain things, which leads me to the cleanup challenge. I'm not sure when I'm going to hold it. It's probably going to be in 10 days or something. But the cleanup challenge is about what do you want to keep in your life and what do you want to get rid of. And it could be about goals, it could be about people, it could also be about stuff. So I've got a lot of stuff here in this space because when my mom died, there was still stuff from my mom and my dad, and of course what we left behind in the house. The house was sold earlier this year, and a lot of stuff ended up here, and it's too little space for too many things. And I really need to go through it and say goodbye. And like I said, we did sell twice because we were supposed to leave after 3 weeks. Actually, we were supposed to go only for 2 weeks. And then because Joe had some trouble getting her passport in time, we made it into 3 weeks. Then I got this severe nosebleed and we actually stayed 4 weeks. So a couple of times you had to make the decision what to keep and what to take with us and what not. And that was kind of easy. And now that I'm back here, I want to do the same. So I want to look at the stuff. Is this for sentimental reasons? Does it have any value? Does it diminish my feelings for mom and dad and my memories? Or, and that's the thing I really need to consider. So the cleanup challenge is about how do I want to live my life after such an experience, and what do I want my life and my space to look like. And I want to invite you to join me in that challenge. So I'm still in the middle of setting up the link. I know what the link is going to be, which is chicarocc.com/cleanup challenge. But I also need to create it still. And because I'm sleeping a lot, ooh, that sounds like an excuse. Might be an excuse too. I still haven't done it yet. But as I said, I'm back in the game, back into routine. And that's nice about having a fixed routine actually over here. I go to the physical therapist like twice a week. I already went to the hospital to talk to someone. So there's a lot of things I already have been doing since I've been back, which is for a couple of days now. And yeah, so it's easy for me to get back into the routine. But some of you might know I usually live on Eastern time, which has led to me being awake at nighttime because I like to do a lot of stuff when it's quiet out there. But when I was actually in Chicago, I was on city time, central time, city time. So I was awake during day and I was asleep during night, which was nice. And I would like to hang on to that, to hold on to that if that's possible. So there's a few things I want to merge, and that's what the cleanup challenge is about. It's about what do you want with the rest of your life? What do you want to do? And how are you going to change it? What do you need to get rid of? What can you incorporate? And what do you want to keep? So for now, that's my 2 cents about my impressions about Chicago. There's a heap more, a ton more I could tell you, but that's not going to happen today. Again, keep an eye on the Instagram, Lady Lexy Speaks Up. Keep an eye on here, Lady Lexy Speaks Up. I try to post some videos daily because every day I'm like, oh, yeah, I want to talk about this, that, and the other. So expect more. And the weekly lives, of course, will go on. So those are there too. And take some time out for the challenge. I think it's not going to be this weekend, but the weekend following that weekend. So probably from Thursday till Sunday, something along those lines. If you have questions or there's something specific you want to talk about, just let me know. And hopefully we'll be there together again next time, me and Cheeky Joe. We were planning on putting on, getting a podcast out there. I'm still planning on doing that. So it's the last 3 months of the year. So no time like the present. I'll see you again next week, or I'll see you on Instagram or on another live or YouTube video. Just find me, and if you have any questions about Chicago or what I talked about, the cleanup challenge, just let me know and hit me up.